Bread! You can even win some of this delicious bread by answering questions throughout the panel. So stay tuned. My name is Jessica Cornwell. This is my husband Adam Cornwell. We'll be presenting all the wonderful bread to you today. Facts about bread, funny anime things about bread, etc.
Yay!
So, wait, why are we doing a panel about bread? Well, obviously because bread is like the best food ever. But also...
Well, I spent some time in Japan, and I got frustrated a little bit with the sort of normal bread. You can't buy normal bread. Japan doesn't have normal bread. So if you want like a whole wheat sandwich, you can't really make a normal, like, you know, you end up with slices of bread that are like 10 feet wide, and it's crazy.
By normal bread, he means like sliced bread.
I ended up obsessing over bread a lot, and I ended up taking a lot of photos of bread and spending a lot of time finding bakeries, and it ended up being this strange thing. So I decided to, I don't know, maybe make a panel or something on it. And yeah, because Japan has done some really crazy things with bread, it turns out. So.
And it does relate to anime.
It does.
There's a whopping total of 3 anime that we know of that's been made just about bread.
Probably more than that, but they're hard to find. So
And it also shows up in every anime. So, therefore, we'll prove this to you by playing a clip of amazing bread in anime. Which will hopefully play as it should. I clicked it. It's not going.
You actually have the original file of the thing?
This is the source of the original files of the computer, so yes.
It blinks, which means that it's trying to go back to the...
Did your installing
I didn't
crap on my computer?
I didn't do anything. Just go play the
Yeah, we'll play the actual file from the source then.
PowerPoint sucks. If you move the files, if you like reorganize them, then it kills it. Just kill it there too.
But whatever.
Try to do this. Try to do this.
売れ残りのコッペパンなんてごめんだもんね。どうしたの宗介、あんたもパン？
干し肉も野菜も切らしてしまってな。しかしこのありさまでは。
何言ってんのよ、あんたらしくもない。もたもたしてると売り切れちゃうわよ。
それは困る。
でっかい声で注文しないと。気迫よ、気迫。
気迫だな。ペパンを要求する。おとなしくコッペパンを出せ。総額は射殺する。
Then I always go like
にしておけばよかったんだ。
アキラ、これあげる。残さず食べないと大きくなれないわよ。お前様よ、実は折り入って相談したいことがあるのじゃが。そうじゃ、ここを一つ腹を割って話さんか。
あとじゃダメなのか。勉強一段落するまで待てねえのかよ。
それが結構深刻な話なのじゃ。ことは急を要する。
なんだよ。
お前様よ、わしが極秘ルートから入手した情報によると、ミスタードーナツが今全部に100円セールを行っておるらしいのじゃ。
神様。そんなはずは。
It's definitely a thing with nacho.
なんでパン屋はうまく焼かなかったんだ。
なんだこの食感は。このふつふつと湧き上がる衝動は一体何なのだ。だった恐れきれん。あれは富士山ではない。世界最高峰エベレスト、別名チョモラン。そして私は今無性にカレーが食べたい。
So, bread comes throughout anime, and that's part of the reason why we love it, besides the fact that it tastes amazing. So, who wants to earn some bread by answering a prize question? Alright, go.
Let's do both.
Yes.
Just two
I'm gonna
things.
say yeast and flour.
Debatable. Like that. Adam
There's
would
the
agree with
visual,
you.
I mean-
Other people wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, there's no real uniform agreement as to.
Alright, I'll give you a hint. You got one right. It's one of those.
Yeah.
Flour and water, hands down, has to be there. Yeast, there's some debate as to whether yeast needs to be present or not. It is possible to make bread such as quick breads without using yeast. And there's also unleavened bread, which is really more like a cracker, but is called bread, therefore.
It's not so well defined. Yeah. You get if you want.
So come up and choose a bread.
We
You
have
have
a
all
lot of
sorts
things
of
to give out.
odd breads to choose from.
If you need.
Green tea bread,
It's
alright.
actually labeled in English. Oh, so they are odd. The boxes in the store were
Not
so
all of
odd
them,
somewhere.
this one
Yeah,
is.
the outside ones, okay.
Alright, so that brings us to wonder, what exactly is bread? Bread always has flour and water, as we mentioned, and whether it contains yeast or not is up to debate. There are also ways to make breads without using yeast that still rise by using baking soda or other chemicals to cause a chemical rising of those bacteria.
Yeah. But yeah, so bread has obviously been around for a long time in most cultures, but it didn't really hit Japan for until relatively modern history. I think, yeah. But overall, in the world history, trace it back 10,000 years or more, which is pretty impressive. It's been stable for a long time. The interesting thing about bread in Japan was just that they didn't really have it.
Alright, so here's a recipe for a basic bread, just so you get kind of an idea of what goes into the process of making bread. You have to mix the ingredients together, knead it, let it rise for quite a while. Punch it down, which means you get out that excess air, which can involve punching. There's other ways also of getting the air out.
It's satisfying to, just actually, because you get this sort of resistance there when you have this loaf that's risen and you actually punch it, and it's surprisingly, yeah, anyway.
You can also get the air out by dropping it. There's other means of getting the excess air out. So you let it rise, punch it down, rise again, shape it into a loaf, rise again, and then you bake. So there's actually quite a few steps that go into making a leavened bread.
Then that takes 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. Each rising is at least an hour
90
long.
minutes.
So now we get into the history of bread in Japan, the history of food in Japan, and then we'll talk about the history of bread specifically.
So yeah, actually rice cultivation came from China. I think it came from China a long time ago, and that was the staple for so long that literally the word for one of the words for meal is rice. So you have meshi and gohan can both be taken as both rice and as meal. So that it's always really strongly connected there. And then later on, soybean cultivation came. Soybean products as a secondary staple. Like demonstrated before, natto. Natto is a fermented soybean product that is an acquired taste, and most people that aren't, even a lot of Japanese people don't like it. For us, it's just like, what the heck is that stuff? It smells weird.
It's kind of slimy.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing.
And it doesn't normally go well with toast, which is what the humor in those 2 clips involving natto and toast.
If you're familiar with sushi and other Japanese foods that we know now, they don't involve really any crazy processing. It's always all entirely about sort of preserving the natural flavor of whatever it is that the basic ingredients that you're using.
Simple.
Dairy products never got popular because of most of modern history. Japan was predominantly Buddhist, Shintoism, but they coexist quite. Some people are kind of both. So, but yeah, if you don't have cows for meat, then you don't have much milk. So,
aside from the fact that it's a relatively small nation, they don't have a lot of agricultural land, which you need for cows. Cows need a lot of space, and so probably for a good deal of Japan, it's not worth it to have cows.
Obviously, there was a lot of influence from China and Korea until all those crazy Europeans showed up in the 1400s and after. So.
All right, prize question. What is the Japanese word for bread? Well, you heard it in the clips. You might not have realized that's what the word they were saying was.
Yes.
Yes. Come pick up a piece of bread as your prize.
So, yes, pan came from, it's the Japanese word for bread because it was, alright,
You'll give away the next prize question.
Oh.
Next prize question.
Okay, I forgot about
Why is pan the Japanese word
Try and give
for
it
bread?
a
We have a lot of bread here. We can't
It's
say all of
not.
it.
It's not a native Japanese word. It came from somewhere else.
So where did the word pan come from? Anyone have any guesses? Any close?
Close.
Very close.
Well, it's French.
Not quite French.
Not French.
Latin.
No, it's very close to
It's
Spanish.
closer to Spanish, yeah.
Italian.
Closer to Spanish than that.
Anyone else want to shout an answer? Get yourself some
Yeah,
tasty
yeah,
bread.
yeah. It was
Oh, it's Portuguese.
yeah.
Yes. It is Portuguese. Bread was first introduced to Japan from Portugal, and they adapted the Portuguese word for bread, which is pan. And I know pan is also the word for bread in other languages too, but Portuguese is the one that they took it from.
Portuguese traders.
And missionaries too. So come get your piece of bread. We have many different kinds. In fact, most of our bread we have one of each kind. So
It was refrigerated until relatively recently. That's why it's cold.
yeah, we had them refrigerated because these are all Japanese bread. And they were frozen shipped from Japan, so they then refrigerated to keep them fresh. All right. As we just said, they began trading with other countries starting in the early 1400s in Europe, mainly with through the Portuguese were one of their major traders, and that's how bread first came to them. But even when bread was introduced to Japan, it wasn't very popular. Even though other desserts and sweet snacks were popular, bread was kind of slow to take off.
Anything that doesn't, there's sort of a what you kind of feel like the Japanese taste in food is fairly well defined, and most things that have kind of showed up in Japan haven't been popular food-wise until they were modified to suit the Japanese taste, which is, back to the sort of simplicity. Using elements from the existing staples, and trying to not overprocess things, and the shit can't be too sweet or too bitter, or that sort of thing.
And then, so they were trading with Europe for a while, and then in the 1600s, the 1800s, the Tokugawa shogunate, they kind of cut that off. They wanted to isolate Japan, so they had cultural isolation, and that's when a lot of the traditional Japanese food culture developed at that time too.
I think I was now being, that was during the
because they didn't have a lot of outside influence coming in at that time. During the Meiji Restoration in the late 1800s, they finally started trading again with European and Western countries. Western technology started coming in. Bread's still not terribly popular though, until the post-war period.
So yeah, as part of aid after World War II, America gave Japan a lot of flour. So they're just like, what are we going to do with all of this flour? You can't, you can only make so many noodles. So they started this program that actually provided bread for school lunches, or part of school lunches. So the kids were, got used to bread. So I think even today, Japan is one of the #1 consumers of American meat, actually. So we're one of the top consumers of American meat. We export a lot of wheat to them because they don't grow really any wheat there themselves.
So in the 60s, we saw the establishment of many Japanese chain bakeries, major bakery lines.
Companies. So these are companies that still exist, sell things all over the country, convenience stores, supermarkets, everywhere. Particularly Yamazaki and Pasco, there's probably about a dozen of these companies. We actually have some commercials later.
There's also a major French influence. Actually, if you one of the clips that we showed before was from a show called Yakitaki Japan, and they actually go to France to learn bread baking in that show, and they talk about the difference between Japanese bread versus French bread, and how French bread is superior in certain ways.
Part of that was because the emperors and such for a while thought that that French cuisine was superior, and so whenever they had guests come into the country or visiting Japan, they would actually like have their French chef make stuff for them because they thought it was actually superior than native Japanese cuisine. So somehow there just ended up being this growing, influence of French food and such in Japan. So yeah, a lot of bakeries now will actually use French names and things like that.
So since in the past 20 years, the popularity of bread has grown quite a bit. If you see these surveys we have here in the 80s, only about 24% of people reported eating bread on a regular basis, whereas in 2006 it was up to 42%. So it's growing in popularity. It's starting to catch up to the popularity of rice as far as food. And now bakeries are very common, and a lot of artisan and independent bakeries are developing as well to get sort of like, creative sense of bread making.
Yeah, it's more going back to more of the sort of organic bakery sort of thing instead of the major commercial. You don't know exactly what preservatives are in it sort of thing. There's just like there is sort of here, there's growing awareness over there. You might want to know what you're actually eating.
Locally made,
yeah,
locally grown sort of thing.
More locally made because they don't grow wheat there. Yeah. What's
Is
that?
Surprise question.
No, it's not a rice cooker.
Let's say it's a bread maker.
It is a bread maker.
It's a bread maker. Come up and get some bread. Don't worry, there'll be other fairly easy questions.
Yeah, the rice
Yeah.
cooker, CNN.
Do we have more questions you can win prizes than there are
it's
people
more
in the
square.
room, so we'll get to it.
It was actually in the was it the? I think it was in the 80s. Matsushita, which has the national brand, which we know over here is Panasonic. They had this sort of, they had merged their major appliance and their small appliance division, the division that made coffee machines and stuff, together. And as part of trying to sort of make this merger of divisions work, they had a brainstorming thing, and they somehow came to the conclusion that maybe they would try making a bread machine. And it turned out to be one of the best-selling things that they had at the time. So that kind of got bread machines off to a good start. And then I don't think they really showed up in America until a couple years later. So that was a Japanese invention, actually. Despite their whole thing with rice being the primary staple, they invented the bread machine. So.
Alright, so we have another prize question coming up. So get ready. Ooh. Yeah. Okay. We need to institute a hand raising policy. But yes, okay.
I think we have enough for everybody, but yeah.
Yeah. You want to come up and get a piece of bread? Yes.
Yeah.
We do have some melon bread actually. Can you figure out which one is melon bread?
It gets kind of crushed when it's shipped, so it doesn't really look so much like it anymore. But yeah. Yeah, when they come out of the boxes, they look kind of squished.
I will say from now on though, please raise your hand before shouting out the answer to a prize question. We want to make sure everyone gets a chance to get some bread. Alright, so yes, melon pan is called melon pan because it supposedly looks like a melon. I say the resemblance is debatable, but sure, why not? So, melon pan. Melon pan's...
I was going to say yeah.
Melon pan's interesting because it's actually made in 2 steps. It has 2 parts to it. The reason why it's so sweet is because it has normal bread dough in the middle and it's actually covered by a cookie-like dough outside of it. It gives it this kind of sweet-tasting crust. Originally not melon flavored, it was only called melon bread because it looked like a melon, but now you can actually get melon flavored melon pan, and as well as many other different flavors. So the pictures here you can kind of see the making process for melon bread. It starts off with the cookie dough and the regular bread dough. You wrap the bread dough in the cookie dough, store it, bake it, and then you have your 2-layered melon bread. So you can kind of see in that last picture in the corner how there's sort of a outer crust of the cookie dough and the regular bread inside.
I see red. Oh, okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that you can get it with different fillings inside, different flavors of the bread. The inner bread can be different, like down in this picture over here, it's actually like a baguette, French
It's
bread,
seriously
covered
like
in cookie
French.
dough.
Yeah, it's actually a different. It was slightly sweet. It was only slightly sweeter than the actual base, but it's otherwise just kind of great looking French bread.
And you can do ones where the cookie dough is flavored a certain way, or the inner dough is flavored a certain way. Mix it up. There's lots of different varieties. And if you Google melon pan, you will find many, many pictures of the melon pan turtles. They actually make cell phone straps in the shape of melon pan turtles. They're just really popular for some reason.
It must have been the last couple of years. I didn't see those.
Yeah, if you Google it now, you'll find lots of pictures of that. All right, another question. Remember to raise your hand. What is the most popular donut chain in Japan? It was in the video clip in the beginning. Does anyone remember where the girl wanted to go to get her sale donuts? No? Yes, Mr. Donut. Mr. Donut is the most popular donut chain in Japan. Bonus trivia, Mr. Donut actually started in America. And it was bought and rebranded by the company that owns Dunkin' Donuts. So Mr. Donuts were over time replaced by Dunkin' Donuts franchises throughout
In
America.
America, but they're all over Japan.
Yeah.
So technically, Dunkin' Donuts actually owns all of the major donut stores in Japan. Outside of Krispy Kreme, the Krispy Kreme is there too. Krispy Kreme had an interesting thing of is it in here? Do you have Krispy Kreme? Oh, okay.
Anyways,
Okay, well, I'll talk about Krispy Kreme. It's not in here.
the next slide.
Yeah. So donuts are kind of bread, right? You can make yeast dough-based donuts, which would then involve water, flour, and yeast.
There's
That's
also,
bread. I call that bread.
There's also ones that are chemically resin using baking soda. So it's flour and water that's been risen. So it's bread, and then it gets fried.
Certainly not a
so
noodle.
it counts.
Sweet. Yeah.
So
Okay, so Krispy Kreme. So originally Krispy Kreme had like 2 stores, and notes on there. Okay. And they had this for some reason. People in Japan like lining up for things. If it's something that anyone has a perception is going to be popular, you'll line up for it for like days. So people wait for like 10 hours to get into Krispy Kreme. And so there was the new one that opened in the train station that was near where I was living. And I decided that I was going to, just for fun, just to have the experience, bike 30 miles to it, stand there for a day, buy like half a dozen donuts, and bike 30 miles back. And so I had the experience of standing with like 200 Japanese people in a line to buy donuts out of Krispy Kreme in a train station. So it was interesting.
there are other.
Why did you take the train?
Because then I would have felt more bad about eating the donuts.
So Mr. Donut is the most popular chain, probably followed closely by
Right,
Krispy
Krispy
Kreme.
Kreme.
There are other chains as well that are
There's a lot of,
smaller.
like, independent ones.
Yeah, like Floresta, Cafe,
Never.
and all the pictures here. The picture on the side there, the green tea, I believe is a Mr. Donut green tea donut, and then the on with sesame, I believe, are Floresta donuts.
That's probably more artisan-y, because I've never seen a sesame covered donut. I'm not sure about that.
But so a lot of those smaller bakeries for sure, and to a certain degree the larger ones will try to make donuts that once again appeal to Japanese traditional tastes, so green tea donuts, on-filled donuts, things like that.
On is red bean paste. Sweetened red bean paste. It's less weird than you would think, depending on how sensitive you are to the texture.
And presentation's also very important. These are also made by, I think Floresta Bakery started them, and then other chains might pick them up to a certain degree, but donut animals, which, oh my god, I wish I could eat one of these, but I never saw them when I was in Japan. So.
I don't feel bad.
So. Alright. The
Anybody
surprise
know?
question, anyone ever seen this guy before. You probably have actually seen him around, but maybe never knew what character he was because he's
Not
a long time
popular
ago.
in America.
Not popular in America.
Unless you
Would you
really
bet-
like Japanese children's shows. Which is okay. It's
Any
okay.
guesses?
Technically Pretty Cure is, you know.
Good guess?
PowerPoint? No. Good try.
Alright.
Yeah.
This is Anpanman. Why don't you grab another piece of bread? You've answered 3 questions.
You're gonna share it after. You're gonna share it after.
Okay.
You're gonna give it to people. We have more than. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's give it to somebody else.
Hokkaido cream. I don't know what that means.
It's just
It's a
cream
cream.
that might be from Hokkaido.
I'm sorry.
Few dairy cows that are in Japan are from Hokkaido.
You know Hokkaido,
So sometimes cream products are named after like Hokkaido, like from Hokkaido cows.
Gives it more of a country feel.
It's like calling it, you know, like fresh cream, straight from the farm type of perception. So yeah, that was Anpanman. It's a superhero with a bread made out of
Head made out of bread.
Head made out of bread.
Yeah.
His head is made out of anpan. And bakeries love to make their anpans shaped like Anpanman, as you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that brings us to talk about anpan.
So Anpan started this bakery, Yasube Kimura, which actually was founded as the Kimuraya Bakery in Tokyo in around, I think it was 1874 the place was actually founded. And located in Ginza, still there, still makes the same stuff, which is pretty impressive. Yeah, that's a while, it's a long time for one bakery to exist. Yeah, it's still a long time. But so they basically invented Anpan.
The guy who founded it, who's Yasube here, is a former samurai. He founded the bakery and created Anpan. So Anpan is usually like a soft bread bun filled with sweetened red bean paste, which is called an. So therefore Anpan. Traditionally made with the same yeast that they used to ferment sake, not so much anymore.
Koji.
And not necessarily anymore, but that was like the original anpan
Now
was made
they
with
just
that.
use normal bread. Everyone's gonna use normal bread yeast unless it's something particularly special. But
So it was very popular right from the get-go, pretty much.
yeah.
Because it had, well, for one, the yeast gave the bread itself sort of a, that taste that was familiar to Japanese, but then also it was filled with an, which was already a really popular sweetener, dessert type thing that was used in Japan.
If you don't actually know about there's a couple of different sort of variations on that. They might crush the beans up more or less. You might actually have some chunks of whole beans in there too.
Anpan made them realize you could put almost anything in bread.
That
And
led
so
to
they do.
this
put almost
crazy
anything in
spiral
bread.
where everything is in bread now. So yeah.
And we have some pictures at the end of like some of the weirder things that Adam personally photographed when he was in Japan of some of the things that you can find inside of Japanese bread. Some of the more normal things or common things in Japan would be chocolate, sesame seed, sweet potato, pumpkin, matcha, which is green tea, cream, like the Hokkaido cream, so stuff like that. We saw the mango custard that was inside the melon pan before.
And I tried making this while I was over there, but I tried to make it healthy, and I apparently tried to make it too healthy, and it didn't really work. So I've tried a couple more times since then, and it worked out better.
So back to Anpanman. Anpanman was originally a children's picture book. The anime's been airing since 1988, now with over 1,000 episodes. And as we said before, he's a superhero with a head made out of anpan, which he occasionally feeds to hungry people, and then the baker makes him a new head. Also, when his head gets dirty or wet, he needs to remove it and get a new head baked from him. Okay.
Pretty much.
That's unfun. I think we should say that. Some other bread-based anime that you can find. Kogepan, which literally means burnt bread, is a short anime. It's 10 episodes, just 4 minutes long each. There's also a couple children's books. It is about the daily life of a burnt and rather unhappy, depressed Anpan.
Yeah, and he gets drunk on milk.
Yes.
So that explains the thing earlier. I think it was actually created by Sanrio or some division of Sanrio. So it's actually sort of amusing.
It has that sort of cutesy look to it too.
Yeah,
He has
there aren't
friends-
so many Kogepan products out there in terms of merchandise.
You can still find them though. You'll see like stickers pop up once in a while of Kogepan.
They sell them in Korea. It was more popular in Korea, I think.
So let's see if the video will work this time.
No, we're just playing from the folder.
Alright, play
Yay.
from the folder. I can play that on that sense too. Does anyone want to watch on Kanban? It's just the opening. He doesn't okay. Okay.
we have to find the getting eaten clip at some point, because that would just be kind of, I don't know.
He did it. This is just like the intro to the show. They use up like 30 seconds of those 4 minutes just to give you the name, and then the rest of it is about him and his friends and their life in the bakery.
Oh, that was it? Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Nice walk on there.
Pokemon's too short for me to take
Yeah.
out clips, so it just
True,
give
you
away
might
the
have to
whole
play the whole
show.
thing,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. You can watch it on, I shouldn't say this, you can watch it on YouTube.
Okay.
Alright,
So this is the big one.
this is,
Who's seen this? Okay, okay.
So we played some clips of this before. All those really intense reactions to good bread come from Yakitate, Japan. It's based on a manga. There's quite a number of episodes. It is about one boy's quest to invent the perfect Japan. A bread that represents and is beloved by the people of Japan. So it actually has a pun in the title. It's taking the English word for Japan and taking the pun out of that.
Word jokes
talking
are
about
a
bread.
theme of the show.
Yeah. So it's Japan, the pun of Japan. Yeah. So this clip is probably either. No, I don't know why. I did move the file, so I don't know why it's not working.
It's only not working because we're actually presenting it now.
That's okay. We can play the intro though.
イギリスパン、ドイツパン、フランスパンはあると日本のパン、ジャパンはない。ならばこれから作るしかない。この物語は熱き父親と太陽の手を持つ少年東一馬が世界に誇れる日本人の日本人による日本人のためのパン、ジャパンを作っていく一大。
It's extremely dramatic for a show about a bakery.
So the other thing there is that the main character has hands that are apparently warmer than average, so he's able to make bread rise faster. That's the whole silver hands thing.
Which they kind of forget about
Yeah.
how it's the anime.
you think it really drives the beginning. But.
Alright, so person who watched Yakitate Japan, there's a demonstration in episode 27 on how to make bread using a common kitchen appliance in Japan. What is that appliance? It is not a bread machine.
It is a rice cooker.
Yes, why don't you come up and grab yourself a piece of bread? You've won a prize. Alright, so we
actually-
have
Cheese, maple. These are all. Oh, that's milk, cream, coffee.
so we actually have the clip on how to make bread with a rice cooker. Is anyone interested in actually watching that? If you have a rice cooker at home, you can learn to make delicious bread. I won't play it if you don't all raise your hand, so
Okay.
we'll skip it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
But we will play the commercial. We have to play the commercial. This was number...
Videos of PowerPoint, so.
Yeah.
Poke, poke,
to use anything to sell anything. So those weren't even particularly special. It's just the packaging had Pokemon characters on it.
So you were recording commercials when you were there?
Well, these are from I found these after.
Alright. Alright. So now let's look at some of that really wacky Japanese bread.
I ranted a little bit about shokupan earlier, but shokupan is the closest to thing that we would consider a sandwich bread. Is that it's square at least, but it's hard to see here. But the slices are probably a half-inch thick, and so bread is usually sold in like a package with 6 slices, which is you would think like what do you
It's a length of a normal loaf,
Yeah.
but it's cut extraordinarily
And because of the preference, the Japanese preference for certain textures, it's this super white, not bland tasting, it's not what we normally think of as appropriate sandwich bread.
It's made with
So
copious
that's
amounts of margarine.
My rant there.
very fluffy.
It's very fluffy. It's supposed to be like crazy fluffy. You could practically probably, if you had enough of it to like make up something like a bed, you could probably sleep on it. It's so fluffy. Okay, end rant. I'm sure Pat.
It's not the most. It's not the most healthy type of bread. Like
Yeah.
it's not.
I spent way too much time while I was there actually trying to make my own bread because of this. So.
All right, true or false? So this is easy. Anyone who hasn't answered yet, give it a shot. Do vending machines specifically for bread exist in Japan?
Oh, he already is.
True.
There's Bill. I guess you could probably answer true for anything related to vending machines in Japan. So, yes.
This is
You
sorry.
have the
Weird.
special. Or
Weird.
prize.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
It's
it's
over
over
there.
there.
All right. So since you answered the bread in the can,
Well, okay, there's bread in a can in America too, it turns out. So you get this is apparently it's actually a traditional New England thing, where they used to actually bake bread in cans over
so yes, vending machines for bread exist in Japan,
They have
and they
special-
sell bread in a can. So now you are a proud owner also of bread in the can.
Who would have thought? So yeah, you can.
There's
Yeah.
lots of different kinds of bread in a can you can purchase in Japan. Here in America, like that's the only kind of, that's all they
only
sell.
kind I've ever
If you go to any
seen, yeah.
grocery store, it's the
Yeah.
only bread you'll find. In Japan, it's a much bigger thing. There's bread in a can, all different flavors.
The funny thing is there aren't so many vending
Brands.
machines for food, but they're even these show up in Akihabara even because it's a snacky thing.
So yeah, canned bread, who knew? These are Yamazaki lunch packs, which are another one of those things where you can put anything inside of bread. So it's actually, these are buns with various lunch-type sandwichy things.
It's sort of like if you actually had normal pieces of sandwich bread that were sort of like sealed together on the edges and had your whole sandwich like in there. So it's like a pita, except not on pita bread, and it's sort of like sealed shut. So anyway, these are.
They kind of have like crustables like peanut butter and jelly, except
Yeah.
they have more than just.
Okay, so this is banana and whipped cream. This would be meat sauce and spaghetti. That's cabbage and pork cutlet. This is matcha chocolate and uji matcha cream. Yakisoba and then pizza and cheese.
Inside of bread.
Yeah. So it's supposed to be your all-in-one lunch thing you can carry with you, but easily. But yeah.
So, give another commercial.
プリキュアパンおいしいパパンパン美しいパパンパンみんな大好きプリキュアパン当て合わせるから私が好きスイートプリキュアパンお祝い記念日にはキャラでこう
Yamazaki is probably the largest nationwide bakery company. The dancing ones. I forget which one's better.
Okay. Here's some commercials for the lunch packs specifically.
It's it's really, they don't really hide what audience they're targeting with these things at all.
It's my style.
And lunch you can take with you. So that was the one targeting businessmen. And we also have one targeting other busy people. Yeah. They do a commercial.
Really?
They don't lie, do they?
No, never.
Okay,
So,
so yeah,
other
just
interesting
crazy
bread.
stuff.
That is actually bacon
That
and
is
cheese
bacon.
on bread.
Totally
Slices of
bacon.
bacon.
And their bacon's in everything now, so.
It might be kind of hard to see, but yeah, it's like a strip of bacon that's been wrapped around bread. Chocolate French bread.
Well, I was there in 2010. So, yeah, things that are shaped really crazy like that. They had a lot of those too. Somebody actually had to make that stuff.
That's probably green tea bread now.
No, it's probably like a
Not
green
just
tea powder or something. Yeah. That was a creative thing. It's a lot of themed stuff like that. That's collect all the stickers and get ways to join their point club thing and that sort of. Every store in Japan has a company has its own sort of like point club thing, and you get prizes for buying $1 million worth of anything. So yeah, stuff like that is really cool. That's actually it's better than you think. It's actually pretty good.
So he says.
I like on, so yeah. That's yeah. Most Americans
Is
don't like
that better
seaweed,
than we
but
think?
I like seaweed. It's still a little bit of a strange combination of textures, but yeah, it looks a little weird, especially in
Again,
photos.
Anpan taught the Japanese that you can put anything in bread. Do we want to put Japan?
Where's one of the shokotan? Just like one of the shokotan ones. The Costco ones are
I
actually
don't think
very
I have a show.
The Costco ones, they're very good.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what this is.
I
don't know what this is.
Japan's the annoying season.
Oh. It's annoying season. Oh! Oh, this one.
朝から元気な本仕込み食べると元気が出るのよ食べる前から元気じゃんいただきますもっちり朝パンもう一枚もう一枚
See, there is once again bread. She's going to get more bread.
More slice.
Yeah. We saw some yakisoba lunch packs. This is just a normal bun stuffed with yakisoba.
That's actually really common. Fried noodles. Yeah. Stir fried noodles. Yeah. I mean, that's a really popular sort of salary man kind of thing. It's more manly than your, like
And you
Swedish
go out to the hot dog
cream
bar, you go out to the
right, stuff,
yakisoba.
yeah.
I think that's it, except for Peach Dog.
Oh, wait, just play the, what are the
This one's really weird. I don't
は入れない。タスコの長熟。
So they're trying to give the image that that's supposed to be like a line of breads that actually has less artificial stuff in it. So they're trying to give the image by having the bear kid that this is like, if a bear likes it, then it must be natural. Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So we've got one more clip to show you, straight from Japan.
Well, our sort of,
I have it. Okay, try now. Hang on. In the middle of the building.
If you don't know about Cooking with Dog, you should go on YouTube, check YouTube and look for Cooking with Dog because it's probably the best cooking show thing ever. Especially if you actually want to learn how to make Japanese food. It's amusing and effective. So it's actually good stuff. And
Hi, I'm Francis, the host of this show, Cooking with the Dog.
It's a brutal
こんに
French
ちは。
accent.
今日はたくさんのリクエストをいただきましたメロンパンを作ります。
Let's make the cookie dough first. Whisk the butter until creamy. Hi, I'm Francis, the host of this show, Cooking with the Dog.
こんにちは。今日はたくさんのリクエストをいただきましたメロンパンを作ります。
Let's make the cookie dough
I'll have a
first.
couple minutes. But
Whisk the butter
So
until
we won't
creamy.
watch the whole thing, but just so you get how awesome this show is.
Gradually add the sugar
As it's narrated by the
and
French
dissolve in the butter. When the color turns to white, gradually add the beaten egg and mix. Do not add the egg at once, otherwise the butter will separate.
it is a real pie, right?
Bring the butter and the egg
Sometimes
to
they're
room
actually real
temperature
pie. But
before
not the
use.
speaking. Well,
This
no,
will make them easier to mix, and the sugar will dissolve better. Add the baking powder to the cake flour and mix with a spatula.
So basically anything that's Japanese that you could think of making, there's a video for
Sift
it.
the flour
Like that.
mixture
They
into
do
a bowl.
how to make anpan, how to make nanpan, how to do sushi.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Japanese woman who made these videos. in
I've seen them
Japan.
on how to do like
Sift it
homemade
again.
lunch pack things.
Yep, how to do
Bento,
like little
bento, so-
hot dog things.
Yeah.
Add 1/3 of the cake flour to the butter mixture.
I'm not completely sure.
Lightly mix with the
I'm
spatula.
not sure what the history of cooking with dog is, but
Add another 1/3 of the flour
it works.
and lightly mix. Add the
French
rest
influence on
and stir until all the flour is thoroughly mixed. Be careful not to overmix the dough. Place the dough on the cooking tray covered with plastic wrap. Rub bread flour on your hands and shape the dough into a cylinder. Cover with the plastic wrap. Cool down the cookie dough in a fridge for over 1 hour. Let's make the bread dough next. Add the sugar,
I
salt,
should make 2 different doughs for this one. So.
don't add dry milk powder, and instant yeast to the bread flour. Whisk the flour mixture well. Dilute the beaten egg with the warm water.
Right, so we did get some bread earlier.
Gradually pour it into the flour and stir with a spatula until evenly mixed.
Some more bread. Wilson, get some bread.
Clean the spatula with a scraper and place the flour mixture on a pastry bowl.
Gather the crumbled flour mixture and form it into a ball.
Like kill people with bread. Sorry.
Briefly knead it with your hand.
We won't throw the can, but if you want the can, you can take the can.
Please take away the canned bread.
She doesn't
Throw the
like it.
dough
I
on a
don't think it's
pastry
actually that
oven.
bad.
Fold it away. Grab the side of the dough. Throw it again. Gather the dough with a squeeze.
Not a little bit, yeah, but
Knead the dough with your hands using your body weight.
cheese maple.
How do we find out?
Repeat this process until the dough is sticky.
Huh?
This is, it's should be no cream.
That's
Yeah,
not actually
okay.
our best bet here. Is this one. I don't think we don't know the ingredients in this, right?
Flatten the dough and spread on the butter.
No, it's not that.
Gather the rim of the dough from the center and knead in the butter.
Green tea or your pancake tea bread.
Okay, so I think it's
When the
probably
butter
something after
is
we're done.
gather the dough with a scraper
You want to
and
get
form a dough ball.
That's actually dorayaki, but
Like shown before. Continue to throw the dough on the bowl.
Thank you. Enjoy that Crepsican.
Knead the
And
dough on the
since
bowl.
we work for staff on
Go again.
Toricon, we're going to plug Toricon. Come to Toricon in
Repeat
Rochester,
this
New
throwing
York.
and
This
moving
starts